I'm Dr. Gayatri, Assistant Professor at Smriti College of Pharmaceutical Education, Indore, from the Department of Pharmacology. In our series about antihypertensive drugs, today we will look at the pharmacology of last class of antihypertensive drugs, that are vasodilators. So that first drug in vasodilators is hydralazine or dihydrolazine. So mechanism of action of this hydralazine is, it is a directly acting arteriolar vasodilator with little action on venous capacitance vessels. It reduces total peripheral resistance and the diastolic blood pressure reduction is greater than the systolic blood pressure reduction. So reflex compensatory mechanisms are evoked when this drug acts, because of which tachycardia occurs, an increase in cardiac output and renin release occurs. So when renin releases, we know that it causes increased release of aldosterone, which in turn causes sodium and water retention. So because of this action, fluid retention and edema may occur while taking hydralazine. There is no reduction in renal blood flow. So even though the blood pressure is being reduced by this drug, the blood flow to the renal or to the kidneys is not reduced, and tolerance to hypotensive action may develop because of this compensatory mechanism. After a period of time, tolerance may be seen. So for that, in order to avoid that, diuretics or beta blockers or both are given in combination with this drug. So because when that is done, the compensatory mechanisms are blocked. So the mechanism of vascular smooth muscle relaxant action of this hydralazine is unknown, but it can be inferred that interference with calcium release or opening of certain potassium channels or nitric oxide generation may be involved. So coming to the adverse effects with this drug are frequent and are mainly due to the vasodilation. So facial flushing, conjunctival injection, throbbing headache, dizziness, palpitations, nasal stuffiness. Coming to the adverse effects with this drug are frequent and could be mainly because of the vasodilation action of these drugs. They include facial flushing, conjunctival infection, throbbing headache, dizziness, palpitations, nasal stuffiness, fluid retention, edema and CHF. Angina and myocardial infarction may be precipitated in patients with coronary artery disease while taking this drug. Postural hypotension is not common because of little action on veins, as we have seen in mechanism of action. They have very little action on veins, and venous return and cardiac output are also not reduced. So paresthesis, tremors, muscle cramps and rarely peripheral neuritis can also be seen. Lupus erythematosus or rheumatoid arthritis like symptoms may develop on prolonged use of doses above 100 mg per day. This is more common in women and in slow escalators. Coming to the next drug in vasodilators, it is sodium nitroprusside. It is a very quick acting vasodilator, and but its duration of action is also short, that is only 2 to 5 minutes, so that the vascular tone can be titrated and also the rate of IV infusion can be also titrated accordingly. It relaxes both resistance as well as capacitance vessels. Therefore, it reduces total peripheral resistance as well as cardiac output by decreasing venous return. So, cardiac output is reduced because venous return is reduced. So, myocardial work is reduced. Ischemia is not accentuated as occurs with selective arteriolar dilators like hydralazine. So little reflex tachycardia is produced in supine position and plasma renin levels are also increased. In patients with heart failure and ventricular dilatation, this nitroprusside it improves the ventricular function and cardiac output by reducing aortic impedance, that is aortic afterload. But it also acts by lowering arterial filling pressure, that is preload. So it reduces afterload as well as preload. Endothelial cells, RBCs, and many other cells split nitroprusside to generate nitric oxide, which relaxes vascular smooth muscle. We know that nitric oxide is a smooth muscle relaxant. So because of this action, nitric oxide is released, which causes smooth muscle relaxation. And the adverse effects of this drug are mainly due to vasodilation. They are palpitations, nervousness, vomitings, perspiration, pain in the abdomen, weakness, disorientation. Lactic acidosis can also be seen, which is caused by release of cyanide. This is about antihypertensive drugs. So what are the conditions in which these antihypertensive drugs are used? One is hypertension, which is anyway known. Apart from that, heart failure, coronary artery disease or high risk of coronary artery disease, history of myocardial infarction, history of stroke, diabetes and chronic renal disease. So these are the other conditions in which antihypertensives should be used. So guidelines for selecting most appropriate antihypertensive drugs. As we know, every patient does not equally respond or does not equally need the same antihypertensive drug. So depending upon the patient's condition, the selection of the drug should be done. For example, diuretics can be used in patients with heart failure, elderly patients and systolic hypertension, whereas diuretics should not be given in patients with gout. In the same way, beta blockers can be given in patients with angina, post-myocardial infarction, tachyarrhythmias or heart failures, and it is contraindicated, that is, it should not be given in patients with asthma, COPD and heart blocks. Calcium channel blockers can be given in patients with angina, diabetes and CVA, and they should not be given in patients with heart blocks. Coming to ACE inhibitors, they can be given in patients with heart failure, left ventricular dysfunction and significant proteinuria. But they are contraindicated in pregnancy, lactation, bilateral renal artery stenosis and hyperkalemia. So coming to combination therapy. So why combination therapy should be given? In patients, generally according to JNC 7, what happens in patients? The patient should be first tried with single drug therapy or monotherapy, and then if single drug therapy fails, to show proper antihypertensive action or to bring down the blood pressure to desired value, in such patients combination therapy should be used. So if one drug while single drug therapy fails, then two drugs can be given together. If two drugs also fail, then three drugs should be given together. And if that also fails, four drugs should be given together. So because of this combination therapy, it is important to understand the principles of combination therapy. So eventually patients, even if they are started on single drug therapy, eventually most of the patients end up on combination therapy of two or more drugs. So why combination of drugs should be used? What is the advantage or what is the reason because of which it is used? So while studying about the blood pressure controlling mechanisms in our body like RAS system and the baroreceptors and other systems which are involved, we have seen that all these systems are working together to control the blood pressure. So if the drugs which are used against this antihypertensive drugs, what happens when they are acting on one particular system and they inhibit one system, other system acts by compensatory mechanism to increase the blood pressure. So while studying about the antihypertensive drugs, we have seen that for many drugs, tolerance is seen after taking the drug for a certain amount of time. This happens because of this reason, that when the drug is being used, the drug is acting against one system, other system acts by compensatory mechanism and causes tolerance. So even if the patient is taking the drug, blood pressure is not being controlled. So because of that reason, it is important to give combination therapy which suppresses both the systems, so that the drug tolerance is not developed and proper antihypertensive effect is seen. So coming to the drugs which can be, drugs which can, for example of this combination therapy is drugs which increase plasma renin activity, that is diuretics, vasodilators, calcium channel blockers, ACE inhibitors may be combined with drugs which lower plasma renin activity, that is PRA. Those are beta blockers, clonidine and methyl dopa. All sympathetic inhibitors except beta blockers and vasodilators except calcium channel blockers cause fluid retention, which leads to tolerance. So in such, when the patient is taking these drugs, addition of diuretic checks the fluid retention and development of tolerance. So when diuretics are given, fluid retention does not occur. So when these drugs are being given, it is good to add a diuretic so that fluid retention does not happen, and because of which tolerance does not happen. Coming to ACE inhibitors and ARBs, they show particularly synergistic effect with diuretics. We have seen this while studying the pharmacology of these drugs. So this combination is very good for patients with CHF or left ventricular hypertrophy. So these are some of the examples of combination therapy. So when we talk about combination therapy, we should also know that certain combinations of drugs should not be given together. So while taking one drug, the other drug may be contraindicated. So these combinations should be avoided. So some of those are an alpha or beta adrenergic blocker with clonidine. It causes apparent antagonism of clonidine action, and then hydralazine with a dihydropyridine or prazosin, because a similar pattern of hemodynamic action is seen. Verapamil or diltiazem with beta blocker, because of marked bradycardia, AV block can occur. Methyl dopa with clonidine or any two drugs of same class should be avoided to be given. So coming to antihypertensive use during pregnancy. So not all drugs are safe to be used during pregnancy. So some of the antihypertensive drugs we have seen while studying their pharmacology that they are contraindicated during pregnancy. So let us look at which are those drugs which are safe to be used during pregnancy and what are those drugs which should be avoided. Coming to the antihypertensive drugs that should be avoided during pregnancy are ACE inhibitors and ARBs, because they have a risk of fetal damage as well as growth retardation. And diuretics should also be avoided because they reduce blood volume, because of which uteroplacental perfusion deficit occurs, which results in increased risk of fetal wastage and placental infarcts, miscarriage and stillbirth. Coming to non-selective beta blockers, propranolol has seen that propranolol causes low birth weight and reduced placental size, neonatal bradycardia and hypoglycemia. Sodium nitroprusside is also contraindicated during pregnancy. Coming to drugs that are safe to be used during pregnancy are hydralazine, methyl dopa, dihydropyridine calcium channel blockers. Dihydropyridine calcium channel blockers, while we were studying the pharmacology, we have seen that they are safe during pregnancy, but during labor they should be avoided because they weaken the uterine contractions. And coming to cardioselective beta blockers and those with ISA, example atenolol, metoprolol, etc., they can be used if there is no other choice. Coming to prazosin and clonidine, they can be used if postural hypotension can be avoided. This is about drug use during pregnancy. So So we have seen about hypertension, what happens in hypertension and its pathophysiology, about RAS system and pharmacology of each class of antihypertensive drugs, treatment goals of hypertension and principles of treatment of hypertension. This is about antihypertensive drugs. Hope you all understood. Thank you.